Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and so glad to tell you that the Codist is back out on Kindle at $2.99. This mystery behind Aaron's robe, the weaponization of DNA, all these things to do with the Levitical priesthood, the line of Aaron and the Sanhedrin calling for the Messiah's return, all impacted by weaponized DNA. This is an amazing story available to you for $2.99. Also, if you go to ignitinganation.com, you can scroll down to the bottom of the page, click on the cover of my newest book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. Click on that picture and give us your email address. We'll send you the first chapter of that book for free. That too on Amazon, both in Kindle and in paperback. It's my pleasure to have as my guest not only an expert in Hebrew, but a friend, Dr. Danny Ben Gigi, who heads up Hebrew World website, HebrewWorld.com, probably one of the most authoritative resource websites for the Hebrew language and for Hebrew information. He is the head of Hebrew World and the former director of Hebrew programs at Arizona State University and the author of the Hebrew English Transliterated Bible, which is the one that I teach from, the world's leading Hebrew Bible program. He's also the author of First Steps in Hebrew Prayer and Psalms of the Heart, the Intimate Touch of Hebrew Psalms. Today we're going to be talking about Hebrew word pictures and the Hebrew alphabet and the prophetic nature and the prophetic truths behind the Hebrew alphabet. Dr. Danny Ben Gigi, welcome to Igniting a Nation and Revealing the Truth.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Well, you know, you and I have spoken so many times at length, maybe hours at a time. It seems that our conversations last quite a long time. And you really encouraged me to renew my relationship with Hebrew that I had such an intimate till I was 15, 16 years old, while I was still heavily involved in the synagogue with bar mitzvah training and confirmation and those kind of things. And so my renewed interest in it and the tools that you have provided have been so helpful to me. Today, I'd like you to explain to our audience, kind of give them an overview of the Hebrew language, its history, both as an ancient language in written form and bringing us up to modern day, and how the alphabet really has such hidden prophetic meaning.
Okay. We know that, the famous book it's not on the market anymore by Dr. Moseson was called The Word, the dictionary that actually shows that all the languages in the world are ultimately coming from Hebrew. And if you trace back, you find a wealth and an amazing correlation between words that you don't have clue that are coming from Hebrew. Some of them are, let's start with one very funny. I'll give you the example that a person goes to a bank. Well, the first thing, who are the persons that you are meeting in a bank? This is it's kind of a simple, funny example, but it illustrates how everything is almost related to Hebrew. You go to a bank, you are greeted by whom? Who is the person that you see in the bank?
A teller.
A teller. Now, have you ever, anybody who listens to us, ever asked yourself why a teller is called a teller? What do they do when you go to the bank? Are they coming and telling you, oh, hello, Rabbi Eric, once upon a time, many years ago, beyond the mountains, there was a king in a beautiful kingdom. They never do that. Never, ever. They don't tell you anything. Why are they called teller? Why are they tellers? Ask the tellers. They don't know either. The reason for that is because a very simple mistake. The word tell in Hebrew and the word count, like counting money, is identical. Safar or sofer. So basically, the idea of a teller is somebody who counts, So it's a counter, not a teller. But somebody along the line made a mistake in translating the two verbs. that are sounding the same, but they mean two different things, and gave them the wrong, mistaken name teller, whereas they're not telling anything, but they're just counting. Just an example. And there are many others, almost thousands of English words, let alone words in other European languages, are traced back and are related to their Hebrew origin.
So we know that the Tanakh, the Old Testament, all written in Hebrew and some parts Aramaic during the Babylonian captivity, during the time of Daniel.
Actually, in the Bible, only a few chapters of Daniel and in Ezra and Nehemiah, but the rest, 99% of the Bible is written in Hebrew.
So the origin of the language, take us all the way back to this was the first language. What do we know of its roots?
You know, we have very little writings of the time that is very ancient, and of course, naturally, very few CD-ROMs and audio CDs and cassettes, even less. You know, but we don't know. We look at the area of Mesopotamia where it all started, and we see other languages too, but they're all related to the Hebrew, the Akkadian, the Ugarit. You can see the connection to the Hebrew language. But we believe that the Hebrew has roots in the pre-Babylonian era. And those roots are, the words sounded apparently the same as much as we know. Again, we don't have any recording of the time, so we can't tell exactly what any word sounded like. But we can assume by looking at the Bible and at the word that, at words, by the structure of the grammar, without making it too complicated, how and what Hebrew sounded like in the ancient time. So there are some arguments about certain sounds that are not sounding appealing to the Western ear, like what we call them the guttural sound, like the ah and the ha. But in modern Hebrew, or even the Hebrew for a few hundred years, we are still saying it is an ah. It's a minute difference in pronunciation, but it's also is a very logical language, and it's one of the languages that is contrary to what many people believe. It's very easy to learn. Rabbi Walker, we're talking about 22 characters, only 22 characters, and we view them as living entities. They have life in them, and 5 vowels: a, e, o, u, and e. That's it. Now, characters, like in English, are letters, and the vowels, unlike English, they are small symbols that appear below, above, or after, which when we mean after, we're talking to the left of characters, because we write Hebrew from right to left and not to left to right in English. I've seen people that pick up the language within a matter of hours. And many, you know, we did seminars in some churches, in some places, and we say, okay, we're locking the door, we're closing the door, nobody leaves until you show 50% proficiency, and oh, they freak out. And, you know, and then I have 2 hours and I'm wasting, quote unquote, wasting the first hour of just speaking about Hebrew. And they are getting antsier and antsier. Oh, you said 2 hours. How? Where are we going to have the time? And it's like, seriously, it doesn't take more than 15, 20 minutes to get to a proficiency of 30%. You know, you repeat those 22 characters. Like anybody, you go to a workplace or friends, new friends. How long does it take to a person to learn 22 new people? They are alive. Not long, a couple of days, you know. And then 5 sounds, and they have symbols, you know. The little T looks like a little T underneath a letter, gives it the sound of ah. Well, we're not going to do a Hebrew class here, but I can do it even without looking. Even orally, people can learn it. But going back to the ancient time, as you asked me, Rabbi, the ancient Hebrew was very much like the Chinese pictographs. Every single character, letter, told a story. It was a picture. So this is every Chinese person that reads Chinese understand it because they live by those pictures and other ancient languages. So was the Hebrew. It was called, the name of that is called Ktav, which means the writing, the alphabet of Da'atz. Da'atz. D-A-T-A-Z. Da'atz. That's the ancient Hebrew. Now, this is what we call today the Hebrew word pictures. Every letter is actually a picture. But before we get into the spiritual power, which is amazing behind the Hebrew word pictures, let me just share one example, if I may, of those ancient characters. They are not like the modern characters, but they are similar. Like at least half of them would be similar to the modern letters, okay? Even before I want to say that, people that know English already know 11 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, even without learning one class, one session of Hebrew. 11, not only that they are 11, but also they are in the same order. You know, like the A is the Aleph, the B is the Bet, skipping one, the D is the Dalet, same order. And then, you know, there is a string of 4, like the KLMN are the Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun. KLMN, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Mem, Nun. And then the last 4 in the Hebrew alphabet, QRST, and in Hebrew, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav. And they sound similar and they look similar. So if somebody were to study Hebrew, learn Hebrew today, they already know 11 of the 22 the letters of the Hebrew alphabet without taking even a minute to learn anything. So now we're left with only 11. It takes no time to learn those 11 and the sound. And that's why I you know, the expression, oh, sounds like Hebrew to me, I don't like this expression. Hebrew is a very simple language. You can learn it in no time. But going back to the ancient, so those letters, those characters, each one of them paints a picture, basically, a picture. So without making it really cumbersome and complicated, can I give you an example? Let's take an example of the very basic, and I'm trying to turn off my phone here. How do I turn the sound off? Okay, let's take the very basic of the basic, the word father. The word father is written in Hebrew by 2 characters. It's like A and B, or Aleph and Bet, the letter Bet. But that sounds a little softer, like Av. That's what you hear. You hear the word Abba, and some of our listeners probably know the word Abba. It's Hebrew and Aramaic. In Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew, the word is Av, A and B. In Hebrew, Aleph and Bet. Now let's take a look, even in our imagination, at the pictures behind those 2 characters in Hebrew. The letter Aleph, the main one, the beginning of the alphabet, and it's in many languages. You know, in English it's the A, in Greek is the alpha, and in many other languages it's the A, and in Latin is the A. They say A, and the B is B and P, C, and so. So obviously the Aleph is the core, the first letter. And look at the picture. When you look at the picture, and this is in that book, if you look at the picture, it looks like a head of an ox, of a bull. Now, what does it mean? What does the ox or the bull meant in the ancient time? It was then the biggest animal in the ancient household. You know, they didn't have elephants to use, but they did in Mesopotamia, but they had the oxen. So the picture looks like a head of an ox, and it stands, because it's a picture. So what is the ox? The strong, the leading animal. The letter Aleph is encrypted, or it's kind of carry the meaning of strong, leading, and first. So this is Aleph. Now, this is an assumption. Let's test it out in several examples, but we'll do just one now. So you take the letter Aleph and you say, okay, it looks to me like a head of an ox. And it means strong, first on leading. And let's take the word father as we use the example. So the word father is made up with the letter Aleph, which is strong, leading, first, and the letter Bet. Now, even by listening to the word Bet, many Americans, English speakers, say, I heard that, Bet, like Beth El, like Bethlehem. Well, in English you say Beth, like the TH. In Hebrew it's Bet. Okay, so Bethlehem, in Hebrew it's Beit Lechem. Beth El, in Hebrew it will be Beit El. That's a correct sounding in Hebrew. So when you say Be, Ba, okay, so here's the word. The picture of the letter Bet is indeed, looks like an inner chamber, like a house. So therefore, the letter Bet looks like, in the ancient Hebrew letters, looks like a picture of an ancient house. And indeed, it stands always for house, housing. Okay, so let's go back to the example we gave, even without showing it. The Aleph was the head of an ox, and it means strong or leading. The Bet is in house. Remember, the word Av means a father. What do we get by the picture? The leader, the first of the house. And people say, oh, that is very nice, but that's a coincidence. And I say, oh, sweet, let's try another one. Take the big, important word that starts with the same letter, Aleph, and that's the word El. And people heard it, Bethel, right? The word El, or Elohim, or so on, and El Shaddai, you know, the God Almighty. But let's take the word El. By the sound, you hear the E, the E, the Aleph, and the El, which is Lamed. It's called in Hebrew Lamed. So you get two characters. Aleph, remember, the Aleph is the strong, the leading. And the Lamed, if you look at the shape of the letter Lamed, the ancient shape of that letter, it looks like a shepherd's staff. And indeed, the Lamed means to teach, to be the shepherd, to lead. Okay, so now let's break it down and look at the word that we're saying here, El, God. The first letter is Aleph. Remember, Aleph means the first, the leading, the first and the leading, the powerful. And Lamed, the El, is the shepherd. So what is God by the Hebrew word pictures? The first leader, shepherd. Amazing, and I can give you hundreds of examples. But it took one author, Dr. Frank Sickens, that spent like 30 or 25 years of his life learning it and getting to the depth of that. He took those ancient characters and he started looking at meaning that come beyond, and it's a wealth of amazing spiritual blessing that comes out of that. And people that don't even know Hebrew learn it in no time because those are pictures. And they are ushered into the Hebrew in a beautiful way. And they don't need to be, of course, not Jewish and nothing to do with religion. It's completely pure language. And you just look at the picture and you understand a lot, just like in those two examples. But there are many more.
You know, you break it down so simply, and you hear the Aleph, and you think alpha, and it's the same thing. Alpha male, the strong, the leader, and so
Exactly.
We see that origin there and the consistency of that origin. The book Dr. Ben Gigi is talking about is called Hebrew Word Pictures: How Does the Hebrew Alphabet Reveal Prophetic Truths by Dr. Frank Sickens, and you can get that at HebrewWorld.com. And
No, one.com.
Oh, Hebrew1.com.
And
okay.
The one is the numeral one,
okay,
and not O-N-E.
All right, Hebrew1.com. And, okay. And this is a tremendous resource for you. As a matter of fact, if you go to the IgnitianNation.com website, to the Books and Media page, and click on it, it'll take you right there to that site to get a copy of this book. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Hebrew alphabet and how it reveals through these word pictures the prophetic meaning and how it associates and why it's important for all of us, Jew and Gentile alike, to understand the origin of the language of the Bible, of the Old Testament, which is the foundation for many faiths, Judaism and Christianity specifically. And without that foundation, it sometimes becomes difficult to understand some of the other passages of the Bible if you don't have this foundation. This is not promoting that you become Jewish or you take on a Jewish identity of any kind whatsoever. This is saying that this is an opportunity that's available to anyone simply, very simply, to use a picture book of word pictures that's available to you if you've ever had a desire to have some mastery of the biblical language of Hebrew. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Danny Ben Gigi. Back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere, and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist.
You tell me when we're live, right?
And welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Dr. Danny Ben Gigi of Hebrew1.com. That's the number one, Hebrew1.com, which is a wealth of resources of biblical Hebrew, exploring the Bible, both for the Old Testament and the New Testament believer. These resources are available to you at Hebrew1.com. And in particular today we're talking about Hebrew word pictures. How does the Hebrew alphabet reveal prophetic truths? Dr. Danny Ben Gigi, welcome back to Revealing the Truth.
Rabbi Walker, it's such a pleasure to be on your show. We talked before about giving kind of a powerful example of the Hebrew word pictures. Take the mere word Hebrew in Hebrew. The word Hebrew in Hebrew is Ivrit. Okay, if you break it down, you see a letter in the beginning, and that letter is called Ain. Today, or in ancient time, it sounds like Ah. It's kind of a guttural sound, but today we say Ah, okay? E. It depends on what vowels we put, you know? So it's very simple. You're adding a vowel out of 5 to any letter, you get the sound. So if you take the letter B, and there is a vowel which is called the A vowel. It looks like a little T placed underneath a letter. Every time you add that little T underneath a letter, you're getting the sound of A. So in your imagination, if you take the letter B in English and put a little A underneath that, it will sound Ba. If you take the letter M and put a little A underneath that, it will sound Ma. If you put the letter S and put a little A underneath, it will say Sa. That's all what it takes. But for the word Ivrit, Hebrew, you can hear E. So the sound of E is made by one little dot underneath a letter. So if you take the letter Bet and you put an E underneath, it will be B. If you take the letter M, put a little E underneath, it will be Me. And if you take the letter K and put a little E underneath that, it will be Ki. So that's how we make now, we have the character Ain, and we put a little dot underneath, it makes it E. So you look at that, you have one letter, and then you have the Ivrit, or E and Brit. Now, I don't know if many people heard the word Brit, like Brit Milah. That's the word in Hebrew for covenant. The word Brit, or they say in English Brith, if some people heard it. Not everybody did, but the word Brit means a covenant. Now look at the word picture. The first letter is the letter Ain. And Ain in Hebrew means an eye. Look at the similarity. Listen to the similarity in the word, in the sound. I is Ain. And if you go to the Hebrew word pictures, the ancient form of that letter, it did look like exactly like an eye. And it stands for to see. So now put it together, the word Brit, without breaking it down, I want to save the time. But Brit is a covenant and Ain is to see. So the word Hebrew means to see the covenant, to watch the covenant. And that kind of indicates the connection between God and the people of the ancient time that he has chosen to carry his book, his Hebrew or the Torah at the time. But it doesn't mean that people of today cannot be connected and associated to that. As anybody who studies the Bible can be very open in the heart to the Hebrew characters. They don't belong to a religion. It's not per se Jewish, it's God's. And God's could be anyone who connects to these characters, because the Bible is given at the time to the Jewish people. But it allowed a lot of people to come into the Bible, and now you have all America under the Bible, of course, under the Messiah.
Yes.
And but so the New Testament is also, they did not find books in completion that are complete books of the New Testament in Hebrew, right? But if you look, and I spoke with a Greek professor that worked with me at Arizona State University, he's Christian, and he said the language of the New Testament in Greek, unlike the spiritual aspect of the New Testament, which is very rich and divine, in terms of language, it's faulty. There are many mistakes there, grammar and syntax and so on, except for the book of Hebrews, it's written in perfect Greek. But all the rest of them, you can see a lot of so-called mistakes there. But spiritually, it's a very rich book, and it's divine. Why? Because it was not written by the Greek people. It was written by Hebrews in the land of Israel, that, and they had to make it available to other people. You see, why Greek? People don't even realize. Israel at the time, the ancient time, the land of Israel was occupied by the Greek. Now, take it with a grain of salt. The Greek as people had nothing holy in them in the ancient time. They were pagans as can be. They sacrificed to their statues that are made of stone and wood. They had the Zeus and Aphrodite and Poseidon and all that. Those are their gods. They did not recognize the God that we have, the real God, the only God. So they brought their statues and all those cutesy-mootsy gods to the temple in Jerusalem, desecrated it, and put statues everywhere and bowed down to them and sacrificed to them. Now, in their religion is derived from their culture, which is the culture of pagans, right? There is nothing holy in their religion, in their culture, but they are the power. They occupied the land, and they forced the Greek language on the people of God. Okay, so when they are the power, in order to make it in ancient Israel, you had to learn Greek. Like, take a simple example here from south of the border in Arizona, Mexico. There are many people in Mexico here and other places in the U.S. If they stick only to their tongue, to the Spanish, they can't really get far here. You can't really get high-end position and so on. You have to learn the language of the land, which is English here. Same thing there. Jews at the time, the people of the book, could not make it if they did not learn the Greek language. So this is the only thing about the Greek that I want to take out some layers of holiness from the Greek, because there is nothing holy in the culture, in the language itself. And every language is deeply rooted into its culture. But now you're talking about a land that is occupied by the Greek people, and the people of the book now have to speak the language. Some of them did not even know how to speak Hebrew anymore. They did a little bit for the prayer and just basic, but to get along, to get a job, they had to speak Greek. New generations, how could they read the Bible if they don't speak it? So that's the reason that the Bible was written in Greek. It was not written for the Greek people. It was written for the Jewish, for the Hebraic people, the people of God, the people of the book, in the land of Israel, occupied by the Greek pagans. So I'm saying there is nothing holy in the language. There is something holy, and very divine and spiritual in the book itself. No doubt about that. So, but the paramount to that language was the Hebrew, and that is to make clear the importance of that language. If I talk to new pastors or people today and they say, oh, I want to learn Greek, I say, save your time. go to the source, go to the Hebrew, which is the origin. If they could do it then in Israel, if everybody spoke and the country was not occupied, the New Testament would definitely be only in Hebrew. But I'm sure there were people that knew Hebrew, and there, without a doubt, there were books there of the New Testament written in Hebrew originally. But you can't find them. And why can't you find them, people ask? There's a very simple reason. The Jews at the time, the people of the book, lost the battle. They've been occupied by the Assyrians and by the Greek and by the others. And the nature, the kind of ironical and cynical nature of history is this. History, unfortunately, is always written by winners. We don't know the history of those who lost, because what did they do? What did they do in the ancient time? The first thing you did, before killing a nation, look, the Roman came and conquered Egypt of the ancient time. The first thing Rome did when they got there, they did not kill the people. They went to the famous, wonderful library of Alexandria, which is held the treasures of the ancient world, and put it ablaze. So the first thing to destroy a nation, you destroy its culture. You burn its books, and you eradicate, and you kind of destroy its language. And that's what happened to Hebrew. And without a doubt, there are books there of the New Testament original in Hebrew. But the people that follow the book did not win the battle, and therefore the copies of that book cannot be found. But they're yet to be found. Who knows what are in different places, in chambers. Like you find amazing books now in the libraries, the hidden library of St. Petersburg in Russia. Ancient Hebrew stuff is hidden there. Who knows what's hidden in the chambers there in the Vatican? And once in a while something pops up. And where are the treasures of the temple? They were taken to Rome, and so on. But I'm saying this: the richness and the spiritual power is in the Hebrew. Even mere names, Rabbi Walker, mere simple names make no sense in English. They're completely meaningless. But take an example. I'd like to give this example to people to say, well, show me a connection between a meaning and a name. So, okay, and destiny. Take the story of Balaam. In Hebrew, in English, it's Balaam. In Hebrew, it's Bil'am. And in Spanish, I know it's Balaam. They call him Balaam. But that's a man. Well, we know by the Bible that he was a wizard, a man with a strong power of cursing. He was super good in cursing. So he is hired by the king, Balak ben Zippor, at a crucial moment in the history of the world. That is one of the crucial moments. That was a time when the Israelites are crossing the Jordan River in order to enter the Holy Land, back from 400 years of exile in Egypt. Crucial moment, right? They are there, and crucial time in the history of the world. The biggest wizard of the time is hired by an enemy, by an adversary, to curse Israel. Now, cursing is a very powerful thing, just as much as blessing. We know that, we understand it. Now, how do you curse? Is that okay? Well, that's a different subject, but cursing is like broadcasting. The same thing as blessing. If you ever wondered why the pastor or the rabbi is standing upon the listeners on a podium and extends the hands down, it's like the hands are making almost like an antenna, casting down the words that comes from our mouth. So they're casting down a blessing, and the same way you cast down a curse. It works the same way. So in order to bless, and that's what we see it in pastors and rabbis, they are standing above the audience, and they are casting down their prayer and blessing upon people. And the curse works the same way. So that king hires Bil'am, and he is there poised on a mountain upon the people of Israel below. And he says, I can see them in their tents just below. Perfect condition to curse. You know, it's like an antenna. You raise your hand, you put it over them, and you curse that nation. We know the struggle that Balaam had, you know, and the donkey opened its mouth and speak. And the more difficult it is, the more riches he's giving him to curse Israel, because this is a crucial moment in the history of the world. And it's very important and paramount to them to curse this nation upon its entry, because they're all below you. You really exert the power upon all of them. But now look at the name, at the mere name of that man. Balaam in Hebrew, Bil'am, is made up of two words. The first one is Bela in Hebrew, and Am. The word Bela means speaking evil in Hebrew. Bela in the Bible means to speak evil. And the word Am means people. So the mere name of this boy at the time of his birth, his mother gave him a name, a curser of the nation. So when he was a little kid, she was calling him, come here, a little curser of a nation. I have some, you know, here's your supper, or here's a treat, you know. He was a little baby already called a curser of the nation. And so are other names there in the Bible. So his name, a name in Hebrew, I want people to understand, a name in Hebrew is not coincidental, haphazard connection of sound and syllable. No, it's a destiny. So when you read the Bible from Hebraic perspective, even if you don't know Hebrew, but just looking at certain names, a whole new wealth of meaning is opening to you. Yeshua, you know the name, Jesus, everybody knows, right? Well, it means to save. The mere name, it's saving. So in the moment of his birth, of course, we know he was already the savior, right? He was meant to save the people. And there are more, a lot of those examples. You know, when I just gave two examples before about the word pictures. So the one of them was the Av, the father, means the leading of the house. Aleph, to remind people, means strong or leading. And Bet was a house. So the father is the leader of the house. Just by looking at the pictures of those two letters, you see the leader of the house. And then we give the example of God, El, the great shepherd. And if some people say, well, it's still a coincidence. Well, look at one of the most greatest destroyers of the world, in the world, fire. It's a great devourer, right? Now, the word fire in Hebrew is esh. Listen to my sound, esh. You hear the fire, it's called an onomatopoeia. Okay, when the sound, the actual sound imitates the sound of the action in nature. But let's look deeper into the two pictures behind the word fire in Hebrew. Well, the first one we already know from this little class we did here. Aleph is strong, leading. And the letter shin, when you make the sound of sh, esh, the letter shin looks in Hebrew like teeth, exactly like the structure of teeth of an animal, sharp and pointed. And look, the Hebrew word picture, the letter shin, looks like two teeth, and they really symbolizes destruction and devouring, okay, destroying. So now put together those two letters for esh, fire, aleph and shin, and what do you get by the picture? The great destroyer, the great devourer. That's what fire means. Isn't that amazing? And and then when you get to even see, you can see everything prophetically coming out from those pictures, and you can get a substantiation of the connection, the unbreakable connection interwoven to one another between Hebrew and the faith of every Christian on the planet. They are connected to Hebrew whether they know it or they don't know it, whether they are familiar with it or not. And we say the better, the sooner, the better, because the enrichment of the soul by understanding the Hebraic roots, you don't need anymore to listen to theology as a haphazard theory thrown upon you from above. You understand it from inside. Let me give you a scary example. The first time I met and I have to make a little confession here. I'm Israeli, born and raised in Israel. And unfortunately, and there is a reason, sociological reason, why some of my people and myself too are kind of characterized sometimes as conceited, a little bit of arrogant. I admit, there is something of that in us. Well, the reason is that we're surrounded by 600 million Muslims there, and they have only one aim, and it's our throat, And we know at Israel at the time was like maybe 2 million people, and surrounded by 600 million. And if you're not good, that happens, So we had to be good. So we kind of coined the term, and the term is to out-engineer the engineer, which means, how do you get a job in America or in England or in organized country? You come there and you do have to adapt the position of the yes man. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Yes, sir. Not in Israel. You get a job in Israel, and that was true then, by outwitting your interviewer. So when you get interviewed, you need to show him how stupid he is and how smart you are. You got the job. Because the country understood that they need to take the talents, not the yes men, but those who can really challenge the. You've seen generals in the Israeli army. I know one. I stayed in his house, He was 36 years old, a general, because he took this approach. He came to his commanders and he outwit them, and the idea was to survive. So a small group of people, if somebody is very brilliant and strong, you need to take them and give them the power and the position because you need them. You don't need the yes men in a country that needs to survive quickly. And that's the reason of the success of Israel in the beginning, to survive. How do you, 7 countries attacking Israel and you survive. Why? Because they are not a yes men. Because they pick up the talents really quickly and they let them work. Okay? So a country like that.
Dr. Ben Gigi, unfortunately, we're out of time.
No kidding. Oh.
Yes, it just went by like it was nothing. So I want to encourage our audience that we're going to have you back on a regular basis. We're going to talk about doing something together at least once a month of you helping to encourage our audience to embrace an understanding of what their faith is based on, and that they don't need the commentary. I grew up with a lot of Talmudic teaching and a lot of Talmudic training, but I had a great desire to go back to just the pure Word of God, not embellished by man. And in order to do that, you have to have a clear translation of the Hebrew into English as it was written, not as it was interpreted. And you've provided that translation for me, and it's been a blessing to me and to very many people. Your website, Hebrew1.com. The book we talked about today, Hebrew Word Pictures, How Does the Hebrew Alphabet Reveal Prophetic Truths? You begin to see from these images that Dr. Ben Gigi has given you of these word pictures, and they're all throughout the Hebrew alphabet, and this book is an extraordinary resource for you, available to you at Hebrew1.com. Dr. Danny Ben Gigi, thank you so much for your time with us here today, and we will see you again soon. Lehit Raot.
Lehit Raot, thank you so much, and it's such a pleasure and honor to be on your show.
Thank you so much. And that brings to an end our live broadcast day, but that doesn't mean we go off the air. We broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can catch us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook Live, and our website, ignitinganation.com. Until we see you right back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central Time in our studios here in Birmingham, Alabama, we bid you shalom.